Amazing sandwich given when I was starving 22 years later, the touching truth was revealed. Jason stared blankly at the spreadsheets flickering on his computer screen, the numbers dancing in and out of focus. Each keystroke felt suffocating, like the weight of a heavy anchor dragging him down into a sea of corporate monotony. He remembered the smell of garlic sautéing in olive oil, the rush of creativity buzzing through his veins, and it felt like a lifetime ago. At 40, he was a husband and father, but his soul whispered of dreams unrealized and passions long buried. Years ago, he had been homeless, a dark abyss filled with hunger and despair. The day Clara had fed him, a simple sandwich between 2 slices of bread, had been the catalyst for everything. Her kindness had ignited hope in a heart that had all but given up. Yet here he was, shackled to an uninspiring desk job, battling the whispers of regret. He taught kids cooking on weekends at the community center, igniting sparks of creativity in their eyes that only intensified his own longing. But back home, reality crushed it all into silence. Just a week ago, life shockingly spun another twist when he heard about Clara's passing. He found himself at the funeral, surrounded by familiar faces from a distant past he barely recognized. The small-town sanctuary held her warmth, an echo of the diner they once had. As he winced through the eulogies, his heart ached with the truth. Clara had always seen potential in him, a vision of what he could become if he had dared to dream. Sorting through her belongings felt invasive, but he was drawn into a wrinkled notebook, her meticulous handwriting filling the pages. Within it, a letter revealed her unwavering belief in his culinary gifts, the opportunity for an apprenticeship shining like a beacon. "You have chef blood in you," she had written, her words a soft caress against his conscience. Memories of long-lost ambitions eclipsed his mind. What if he had taken her offer? What if he had dared to follow the path of his passion? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weight of Clara's hope pressed down on him. Could he still chase his dreams now? The fear clawed at his gut: failure, judgment, financial instability, and he felt paralyzed. Amy worked tirelessly at the clinic, bringing stability to their lives. Would she understand if he wanted to embark on a journey that risked it all? The late-night dinners they shared were moments of unity, but they masked discontent beneath laughter. What if cooking became not just a necessity but an expression of their love? As he stood outside the once bustling diner, now silenced, waves of nostalgia crashed into a storm of unresolved feelings. What would Clara say now? Would she urge him to reclaim the passion and become the man she believed he could be? As the weight of the past bore down on him, he sensed the freedom teetering just beyond the threshold, and anxiety surged through his body. Here he stood, tracing the outline of destiny in the shadows of this diner. He was caught in a whirlwind of dreams and obligations tonight. His decision could shape the legacy he left behind. The echoes of Clara's belief resonated within him, prompting Jason to finally confront the impending choices that hovered like uninvited guests in his mind. A decision loomed, a fracture between the safety of complacency and the audacious leap toward a life brimming with passion. He stepped tentatively into the diner once more, the floors creaking under the weight of lost dreams. He could almost hear Clara's laughter, the clatter of dishes, her spirited encouragement drifting through the air like the savory scent of her signature beef stew. As he sat at the counter, the worn vinyl still held the imprint of countless conversations, meals shared, laughter exchanged, moments that had once felt infinite. Did these walls remember him? The boy clinging to survival, whose only comfort had been the sandwiches Clara lovingly crafted. They had once represented nourishment, now, they stood as a reminder of everything he had abandoned. The thought ignited a spark. Jason pulled out Clara's notebook and flipped through the pages. Every droopy celebrity recipe, every handwritten note regarding charity efforts and community meals, whispered to him now, urging him to remember. "You have chef blood in you." The words cascaded like a waterfall, eroding the stubborn rocks of doubt that had formed over the years. A plan began to sprout within him, taking root like an idea thriving in fertile soil. What if he held a gathering? A night to celebrate food, much like those evenings Clara had hosted in the diner, an event that could reawaken the love of cooking he hid under layers of domesticated conformity. He could invite the town, share dishes that honored Clara, and reignite the culinary passion that defined his youth. Faces of his past flashed through his mind, the little girl who always questioned why hamburgers had to be round, or the senior couple who claimed his pecan pie could cure loneliness. These connections were the very fabric of who he was. But with every rhythm of celebration came the frenetic pulse of fear. What if the town did not embrace this venture? What if his culinary skills were not what they used to be? What if Amy didn't support him? Jason took a deep breath, the air carrying the aroma of nostalgia and possibility. Remembering Clara's unwavering faith in him, he resolved positively. The fear of judgment paled in comparison to the regret of remaining stagnant. This event would not just be about sharing food, it would be in homage to Clara's spirit and the culinary joy she had instilled in him. Later that night, Jason broached the topic with Amy over a kitchen sink stacked with dishes. She listened intently, her concise brow furrowing slightly as he outlined his idea. "I want to honor Clara," he said, the words gaining momentum. "And it's more than that, I want to reclaim who I was. I can't ignore the call to create any longer." "I want you to be happy," she replied after a pause, uncertainty threading through her voice. "But this might be a lot. What if it doesn't go well?" Her hesitation clipped his new resolve briefly. It felt like a death knell to the excitement he had just built. Yet, beneath the concern was the flicker of understanding, the love they shared revealing a path. Jason seized this moment. "If it doesn't, I'll learn from it. But I have to try. I owe it to Clara and myself." As he laid out the plans, Amy's gaze softened, hinting at the shared battles they had fought together. They would take this challenge side by side, even if uncertainty loomed larger than dreams. With newfound vigor, Jason began to organize a community dinner with Clara's spirit as his guide. Every call made to old acquaintances reignited connections he had long neglected. But even as excitement surged, an unsettling thought nestled between optimistic dreams. A rival's shadow, a respected chef in town who had once belittled Jason's talent, hung over him like a storm cloud. The time had come to face not only his past but also those who inhabited it, potentially thrusting him into a battle for respect and identity he set out to reclaim. The prospect of an impending confrontation sent tremors of uncertainty coursing through him as he compiled the guest list. As evening shadows stretched across the diner, Jason initiated the first steps towards reclaiming his passion. Little did he know, the past would not easily relinquish its hold. An old rival was ready to confront him at this dinner. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting deep orange and purple hues across the sky, Jason focused intently on the guest list splayed before him. It was a simple document, just lines of names and numbers, yet it felt heavy, each entry a crucial potential connection, a lifeline back to a world he had distanced himself from. The thought of welcoming his contemporaries, and maybe even his critics, into the space Clara had nurtured like a proud garden stirred an amalgam of anticipation and dread within him. He couldn't shake the image of Robert, the chef who had scoffed at Jason's early culinary aspirations. The memory of Robert's dismissive laugh echoed in his ears, a specter urging him to reconsider his choices. Jason felt the prick of doubt creeping in as he pondered the possibility of standing in front of faces that had witnessed his former failures. The stakes were higher than simply hosting a dinner, he was laying bare his identity. After days of anxious preparation, Jason felt both galvanized and vulnerable. A gentle nudge of determination surged within him each time he sharpened his knives, each meticulous slice of vegetables a reminder of his intent to reclaim what had been lost. He practiced his signature dishes, every simmering pot a transport back to Clara's warm kitchen, filled with the rich aromas of innovation and tradition intertwined. With every step forward, he cultivated a visceral connection to his past that reignited his desire to forge ahead. The night before the gathering, Jason found himself unable to sleep, his mind racing through a parade of potential failures. What if he burned the lamb? What if his dessert fell flat? Each what if loomed larger, filling his chest with a tightness that felt like an anchor dragging him back toward his former complacency. Yet amidst the tide of uncertainty, he recalled Clara's words, "Mistakes are just the missing ingredients to growth." Fueled by this clarity, he scribbled notes in a new notebook, outlining the nuances of each recipe and the stories he would tell alongside them. His pulse quickened. He realized that this wasn't merely about food but about reclaiming ownership over his narrative, shifting from the shadows of others' perceptions into the radiant light of his own potential. Morning arrived with a brisk breeze that played at the edges of his resolve. He stepped outside, inhaling the crisp air, feeling as if each breath swept away remnants of doubt. Today wasn't just another day, it was the beginning of bridging the gap between who he had been and who he aspired to become. He assembled everything he needed, collaborating with available local vendors, rediscovering flavors that had once tantalized him. As he mixed, whipped, and baked, the act of creation became as crucial as the food itself. Each dish embodied the love and loss intertwined in his life. As darkness descended and the flickering lights of the diner glowed to life, Jason glanced at the clock. Guests would arrive any minute. He straightened his apron, feeling the weight of what was to come. The fear of facing Robert, and by extension, his past failures surged anew, but now it was tempered with an equal measure of hope. Suddenly, a knock at the door pulled his attention. Breath heavy with anticipation, he opened it to find familiar faces lining the entrance, some smiling warmly, others wearing expressions of cautious curiosity. And then he saw him, Robert, standing at the back of the crowd, hands tucked into the pockets of his sharply tailored jacket. Their eyes locked. Jason felt a surge of adrenaline, resonating with unspoken challenges simmering under the surface. This was more than just a meal, it was an ultimatum. Would he rise to the occasion, face his insecurities, and reclaim his identity, or would the weight of judgment immobilize him? Clenching his fists, he made his choice. The time had come to put everything on the line. No turning back now. With the heartbeats of his guests echoing in his ears, Jason took a deep breath. Tonight, he wouldn't just serve food, he would serve a testament to resilience, courage, and the ability to face one's past. As he stepped toward the bustling kitchen, the challenge before him crystallized. This was his moment for transformation, and it began now. But beneath his brave facade, doubts stirred. Would the menu he crafted be enough to silence Robert's critique? The confrontation he would face was not just about the food he prepared. It transcended into a deeper battle for respect, acceptance, and the affirmation of a dream he had almost forsaken. The kitchen buzzed to life as Jason entered, the energy palpable, yet it felt eerily electric, as if every nerve ending was amplified. The clanging of pots and pans echoed like the racing thoughts in his mind. He could hear the chatter of guests filtering through the walls, laughter and nervous excitement intertwining. It was a sound he had longed to hear again, yet it poured cold water on his courage. He glanced at the array of ingredients laid out, a vibrant spectrum of colors that promised potential. Each vegetable, each cut of meat carried with it a story, a fragment of a life he had pieced together under Clara's guidance. But why did Robert's presence loom so large? Was it just an insult to injury, or was it a catalyst for something deeper? It felt as if Robert was a gauge, measuring Jason's worth against standards that were never his own. As Jason prepped the dishes, tension coiling tightly in his chest, he thought of the many nights in Clara's kitchen, where flavors danced under laced fingers. What would she say to me now? He wondered, darting quick glances at the food as if it might reveal the answer. Would she encourage him to embrace his wildest ambitions, or caution him against failure? It was a paradox he was determined to unravel tonight. He caught sight of a small mirror on the wall, dusty, cracked, emblematic of the years gone by. In it, he saw the fatigue of uncertainty behind his eyes juxtaposed with the resolve forming a concrete layer beneath it. The reflection stared back, not just a chef but a man on the brink of rediscovery. It struck him then that he need not carry the weight of judgments. This evening was his chance to transcend the fleeting perceptions of others, to carve out a narrative tethered to his own ambitions, not someone else's doubt. He began to move through his repertoire, chopping, mixing, and tasting with increasing purpose. Each dish was constructed with intention, as if he were building not merely a meal but a bridge towards transformation. No longer would he be defined by his past, and he actively bore witness to his own growth. With every plate he crafted, doubts tensed in his gut but were met with a firm counterpoint, the belief in his capability. He remembered a lesson from Clara: confidence is the key ingredient. Suddenly, all his early fears gave way to an emboldened hope. This was a stage, and he was the star. The moment arrived where he snapped back to the present guests were seated, forks clinking on plates, dialogue dulcetly mingled with anticipation. The dinner had commenced. But as he peered out from the kitchen, he felt a flicker of anxiety at Robert's table, an unwavering force who could cut through his newfound courage in a matter of seconds. The dread settled back onto him like a heavy cloak, tightening. Tonight is about passion, he reminded himself silently, and as he dished out the first courses, adrenaline pumped through him, sharpening his focus. Would the storytelling enhance the food, or would Robert deem it a mere distraction? Each plate he served felt like a conversation. "This dish is a reminder of heritage, of perseverance amid silence," he announced to the room, gauging the reactions carefully. A small smirk from one guest. A frown from Robert. Was he prepared to face his own vulnerabilities head-on? That unresolved tension started bubbling beneath the surface, stoked by the fire of critical eyes. The faintest tremor of doubt had returned, trying to claw at the very confidence he had so eagerly constructed. As the final plate was served, Jason confronted the moment he'd been waiting for. Robert stood to speak. Every eye in the room turned toward them, and Jason's breath quickened. Would this be validation or dissection? The room held its breath, and in that charged silence, Jason sensed a pivotal juncture beyond just culinary success. He was about to either affirm his worth or dismantle the fragile hope he'd only begun to build. As Robert opened his mouth to speak, Jason's heart raced. Would he receive acceptance or another round of dismissive critique? The moment hung before him, pregnant with possibility and uncertainty, and the answer would reveal itself in just a heartbeat. The heaviness of anticipation lingered in the air, palpable enough to slice through the tension. Robert's look was inscrutable, his mouth set in a thin line that promised neither approval nor outright disapproval. Momentarily captivated by the ricocheting uncertainty within him, Jason fought the urge to retreat into his shell, the familiar instinct honed from years of feeling inadequate, of standing in shadows while others shone brightly. "Let me start by addressing the food," Robert finally said, his voice commanding yet neutral. "Jason, what you have just presented showcases a unique storytelling element that I find intriguing," he continued, and Jason's heart thudded, unpredictably flipping from dread to cautious hope. Perhaps tonight would surprise him. With his brows slightly lifted, Robert went on to dissect the dishes, noting the balance of flavors and the cultural significance woven through their elements. Jason wanted to process the feedback, to embrace the validation. Yet, beneath Robert's praise was a hint of something colder. Did Robert truly appreciate his effort, or was he simply preparing to deliver the gut punch laden with condescension? As the words flowed, Jason's mind flickered past Robert's critique into the depths of self-doubt. Clara's lessons came racing back. Was this his moment to accept gratitude or to weaponize the fragility of his dreams? He had tasted success before, but the specter of Robert loomed over each victory, muting the vibrancy of his accomplishments. With every commendation Robert bestowed, Jason's inner voice simultaneously interrogated its authenticity. Was this man capable of sincere admiration, or did he relish power play? With growing steadiness, he made a silent pledge to wrestle control back from the critical eye of his past. As Robert concluded his assessment, Jason felt a burgeoning rush of defiance. "Thank you," he responded, his voice firm. "But I want to tell my own story. This food reflects not just ingredients but my resilience and growth." He noticed a flicker of surprise across Robert's face, quickly masked, only to be replaced by a tight smile. Did he sense the shift, the unmistakable energy of someone reclaiming their narrative? Jason felt the atmosphere thicken with electric potential, the kind that energizes rather than stifles. The rest of the dinner was an unfurling tapestry. Each moment brought laughter and connection, and Jason poured his heart into every interaction. Conversation blossomed around the table, people animatedly discussed flavor profiles and found common ground in culinary histories. He was partaking in a dialogue rather than merely serving food, and it was transforming his role that of a mere chef to that of a creator, a storyteller, a leader. But even as the joy persisted, fragments of self-doubt crept in again. Even if he received praise tonight, the tentacles of Robert's judgment still lingered. How long could he sustain this momentum? He noticed a few guests nodding, caught in the heated thrill of the experience he had orchestrated, yet Robert remained radio silent, observing the drama unfold like a predator on the prowl. The lingering threat of dismissal still loomed directly over him. He couldn't allow that fear to sabotage what he'd built. They were past the appetizers now, and with each passing course, Jason felt the confidence that was once a flicker now blazing, illuminating his path forward. When Robert stood to speak once more, Jason braced, heart thumping furiously. What awaited him this time? An invitation to continue proving his worth, or a challenge to crumble beneath expectations? He wondered briefly if this interaction would be a turning point or merely another hurdle to vault over. The guests leaned in, a collective holding of breaths, and Jason prepared himself, ready to confront whatever verdict lay ahead. The weight of this moment was as delicate as the finest soufflé, precariously balanced between validation and criticism. And as Robert began to articulate his thoughts, Jason felt the ground beneath him shift, setting him on a new trajectory. Was tonight the night he would finally reclaim his own story, once and for all? Robert's voice cut through the ambience like a knife, crisp and purposeful, as he began to speak. Jason, he said, framing his words with a self-assured gravity. This dinner was not merely a culinary experience. It was a statement about who you are as an artist and a chef. But the pause hung in the air, imparting a chill that made every hair on Jason's body stand at attention. A bead of sweat trickled down the back of his neck as dread filled the space between anticipation and fear. I'd like to see more, Robert continued, his tone shifting, revealing the contours of his expectations. You have potential. But I need to understand the narrative behind the plates. A maelstrom whipped inside Jason. Here was Robert, the figure who loomed over his career, presenting both a challenge and an opportunity. Jason's resolve solidified in this moment. He couldn't just please Robert. He needed to confront his own biases, redefine his identity beyond labels tied to validation and approval. Jason straightened his back, drawing from Clara's teachings. To grow, he had to confront adversity directly, not sidestep it. I appreciate that, Robert, he said, carefully articulating each word. And I want to embrace this opportunity to explore deeper aspects of my culinary narrative. I can do more than this is just the beginning. His words felt like an invocation, stirring something within. The reaction was seismic, Robert's surprise transformed into grudging respect. Then show me, Jason. Your next dish must speak not just to flavor but to the soul of who you are. I expect you to challenge yourself, to push past the boundaries you've set. With clarity dawning over him, Jason felt something shift, a realization that he wasn't merely responding to Robert's demands. This was about him claiming the direction of his own craft. He wasn't just fulfilling the role of a chef, he was becoming a creator, someone whose voice deserved amplification. But was he ready? The weight of responsibility felt heavy on his shoulders. As Robert resumed his evaluation with the guests, outlining the dinner's highs and lows, Jason's thoughts spiraled into a pool of introspection. It wasn't just skill at stake, it was a dance between authenticity and expectation. The fear of being discarded lingered, but so did an emboldened anticipation of transformation. After the formalities wrapped up and the guests milled about in animated discussions, Jason stepped aside, reeling from the encounter. He needed time alone to process this charge. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of creativity, now seemed like a battlefield, separated by the intersection of vulnerability and courage. Peering into the shimmering pots and pans, Jason committed to himself a promise. He would craft his next dish with unfiltered honesty, a reflection of the struggles, triumphs, and lessons ingrained in him. This was his narrative, and no one could diminish its essence but him. However, self-doubt crept in as he turned his back on the comfort of the past. Each minute of hesitation felt like an anchor threatening to drown him in uncertainty. What if he failed to meet Robert's challenge? What if the next dish fell flat? The shadows of previous failures loomed, whispering doubts caked in the remnants of his past. The call of the unknown with its intoxicating promise of creativity and expression vied to drown out the inner voices of defeat. Jason inhaled deeply, summoning his resolve. He was thin yet resilient, poised on the edge of transformation. It wasn't just about making food, it was about carving out space for his story to breathe in the culinary world. With every second ticking by compelling him forward, Jason stepped into the kitchen, ready to map his next journey of flavors. Could he achieve what he envisioned for himself? Could he narratize the very essence of who he had become through his craft? As he arranged his tools and surveyed the array of ingredients, the door swung open unexpectedly. A familiar figure stepped in, grinning with an enigmatic energy. Jason's heart leaped with dread and curiosity. What now? Jason turned, heart racing, as Clara entered the kitchen. Her presence filled the space with a palpable energy, swirling between warmth and the scrutiny he feared. The confident smile on her face soon faded as she took in the tension etched on his brow. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, assessing the tools of his impending creation scattered around the countertop. "It's Robert," he confessed, stepping away from the stove as though distancing himself from the flames could cool the fire of expectation. "He thinks I can do better, wants me to dig deeper into my culinary story." "And do you think you can?" Clara's voice was both gentle and firm, coaxing him out of his self-doubt. "I need to," Jason replied, the weight of her question anchoring him in reality. The process of self-exploration he had envisioned now felt daunting. "But what if I can't find a story worth telling?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You've been through so much. Your journey isn't just about the food, it's the experiences that shape you as a chef. What have you learned? What have you tasted, felt? Pour that into your dishes." Her words rattled in his mind. Jason reflected on his journey, each dish a chapter, each ingredient a memory. The fusion of his childhood experiences, the struggles, the moments of triumph, and the deep-seated fears. Was this the narrative Robert craved? Could he serve up a blend of authenticity mixed with the skills he had honed over the years? "Every meal I've created has a piece of me in it," he murmured, almost to himself, as he recalled the spirit of his early days in the kitchen, eager yet unsure. "But I've been so focused on technique and pleasing others, I forgot about the story behind it." "Exactly," Clara encouraged, nudging him further into this discovery. "Embrace your truth. What does that look like on a plate?" A flicker of an idea ignited within him, sparking a flurry of imagery and flavors. Jason's pulse quickened as he sketched an outline in the air with his fingers, envisioning vibrant components, heirloom tomatoes, crisp greens, artisan breads, and spices that danced with individuality. What if he turned his personal tribulations into the heart of his next offering? Suddenly overwhelmed with the prospect of channeling his life experiences through culinary performance, he paused, stuck between enthusiasm and the familiar clench of insecurity. "But what if I take that step and fail?" Clara stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Then you learn. You fail and you learn. There's courage in that vulnerability. It's the only way to truly grow as an artist, even as a human." Each word carved a fresh path in his mind, challenging the chains of fear. He was no longer just a chef, he was an artist weaving together flavor and emotion, resilience and ingredients. "Okay," he breathed out with newfound determination, "I'll do it. I'll craft something that embodies my story." But as Jason prepared to engage deeply with his vision, self-doubt still slinked in the corners of his mind. What if this exploration of his inner self didn't resonate? What if the risks he was willing to take became his downfall instead of his ascent? "Hey, I'll be right here," Clara reassured, as if sensing every flicker of vulnerability within him. "No matter where this takes you." She was his anchor, the reminder that he didn't need to fear the journey alone. With his spirits slowly rising amidst the warm kitchen light, Jason spread out the ingredients he had chosen, feeling the heartbeat of his narrative thrumming through them. Could he truly weave his identity into a culinary masterpiece and transform perceptions about who he was and what he represented? Just then, a knock broke the stillness, penetrating the focus he'd built up. A voice from the doorway echoed with intent. "Jason, are you ready? We need to talk." All at once, the shifting tides of anticipation and dread converged again. Who knew what this new message would bring? Jason's heart sank at the sound of Robert's voice, not because he dreaded the conversation, but because it signified a turning point in his journey, a moment where he could either rise or retreat. The kitchen, once a sanctuary, suddenly felt like an arena, the ingredients he had laid out lying in wait like soldiers ready for battle. "Yeah, I'm here," he finally called back, his voice steadier than he felt. Robert entered, his presence commanding even in the comfortable familiarity of Jason's kitchen. The veteran chef's eyes scanned the cluttered countertop before meeting Jason's gaze, a mix of respect and expectation hovering between them. "You've been given a unique opportunity, Jason, and I want to help you navigate through it," he began, his tone all business yet leaving room for inspiration. As Robert leaned against the counter, Jason's mind raced. What did that mean? Could Robert help him unearth the flavors of his past? Or was he simply here to critique? The uncertainty churned within him, threatening to overwhelm the fragile confidence he had just begun to build. "I want to know what you plan on plating for the next menu cycle," Robert continued, crossing his arms as if to shield the vulnerability they both felt in this moment. "But more than that, I want to understand your story. What drives you in the kitchen?" The challenge registered within Jason. He wasn't just being asked to create, he was being asked to reveal. And in revealing, he had to confront the messy tides of his past. "I'm working on that," he admitted, the words tasting heavier than he expected. "I want my dishes to reflect who I am, the challenges I've faced, the moments that have shaped me." "That's what I want to hear," Robert encouraged, pushing off the counter, his voice evolving into a motivational cadence. "Every ounce of flavors, every ingredient should echo with your truth. Think of the sandwich your mother made you when you needed comfort, or the first meal you cooked alone. What emotions did it stir? What memories does it invoke?" A vivid picture flooded Jason's mind, the chaotic rhythm of his childhood kitchen, his mother's stirring pots, the intoxicating aroma wrapping around him like a blanket. In that moment, a faraway recent memory emerged, his first attempt at a sandwich after a long day of high school, hungrily put together in a rush, but made with care. His body tingled at the recollection. "Those moments," he murmured, more to himself than to Robert. "They were honest, they were me." "Right," Robert interjected, emboldened by Jason's flickering passion. "Don't shy away from that honesty. Highlight it. Think about presenting that emotional honesty as a plate. When you transform those memories into flavors, that's when your dishes will resonate." The prospect swirled amongst the spices and colors Jason had arranged on the countertop. What if he could create a dish that conveyed his journey? The fear of failure lingered, but it felt lighter now, almost like a challenge instead of a threat. As their conversation unfolded, Jason felt his narrative taking shape in the air between them, intricately dotted with memories and layers of spices that told stories louder than any words could. The enthusiasm began to replace doubt, turning into a palpable energy that thrummed through him. "I want to create a sandwich that reflects the essence of my childhood, the lessons I learned, and the resilience I have gained." A confident smile crept onto his face as he articulated the vision. "That's the spirit, Jason," Robert exclaimed, the weight of expectation shifting into a collaboration of creative energy. "Now let us dive deeper. What flavors symbolize those experiences?" Just then, Clara stepped back into the kitchen, her eyes wide with curiosity. The moment hung in the air, filled with unspoken possibilities. What revelations would surface as they crafted this dish together? "I can't wait to see what you come up with," she said, beaming at Jason's spark of creativity. But beneath that excitement was Jason's own realization. Uncovering the layers of his story would take him deeper into uncharted territory than he'd ever anticipated. With renewed determination, Jason turned towards Roberto, ready to shape his past into a fierce culinary narrative. But as Robert leaned in closer, Jason couldn't shake the looming question: was he prepared to confront everything those memories entailed? The thrill of discovery twisted into a strange knot of apprehension, digging into him just as fiercely as the flame from the stovetop. And that was just the beginning. How far could he push himself to embrace his truth? Jason stood at the counter, the remnants of half-formed ideas and childhood recollections swirling in his mind like a tempest. Clara's enthusiasm was infectious, but the weight of his emotional journey loomed large, its specter both intimidating and invigorating. He felt like a painter staring at a blank canvas, awaiting the first stroke that would ignite his creation. "Let us narrow it down, shall we?" Robert prompted, breaking the silence that had settled over them. "What flavors can you associate with those pivotal moments?" It's one thing to say you want to evoke your childhood, it's another to translate that into your unique culinary voice. Jason took a deep breath, glancing over the array of ingredients sprawled across the countertop. The scents began to mingle in his consciousness, weaving a tapestry of flavors linked to his past. He thought of ripe tomatoes, their sweetness reminiscent of summer afternoons spent in the garden with his mother. The sharpness of pickles conjured memories of family picnics where laughter rang louder than the clinking of utensils. "Tomatoes would definitely be in there," he said, his voice gaining momentum. "And I remember how my mom used to use fresh basil, so fragrant and comforting." "Great start," Robert replied, his eyes narrowing with keen interest. "What about textures? What did those meals feel like to you?" Jason paused, a frown creeping across his face as he pondered what those textures might represent. His mind played back through the memory's sloppy yet satisfying sandwiches, the occasional crunch of fresh bread contrasting with the softness of the fillings. "Definitely crunchy," he said, finally understanding the question's essence. Like the sound of the knife slicing through the crust, and the satisfying resistance when you take that first bite." "Good. That's sensory involvement," Robert affirmed. "You're not just creating a dish, you're inviting the diner into your experiences." As they discussed further, Jason felt a growing sense of purpose. He was beginning to map out a culinary language of his own, one that did not simply imitate, but spoke directly from the heart. He recalled lessons from childhood about resilience, the struggles he faced, and how improvisation often saved the day when the intended ingredients ran out. "What about a contrasting element?" Robert suggested, watching as Jason's creative energy took form. "A flavor that surprises or challenges the other elements? Maybe something unexpected like spicy jalapenos," Jason mused. "They represent those moments of chaos in my upbringing, the heat that made everything alive, both terrifying and exciting." "Yes. That juxtaposition would work beautifully," Robert encouraged. "Now, think about plating this. What would it look like to show that journey graphically?" With every question, every probe into his past, Jason felt layers unraveling. The memories were no longer just echoes, they became textures, flavors, and colors waiting to be arranged on a plate. Each ingredient was a brushstroke, adding vibrancy to a canvas that once felt so daunting. But just as excitement began to crest, another voice wove through his thoughts, the voice of self-doubt, whispering that he could fail in this endeavor. What if the memories didn't translate as beautifully as he envisioned? What if diners couldn't connect with his story? Panic flickered in the corner of his mind, threatening to extinguish the fire of creativity he just ignited. Jason clenched his fists, wrestling fiercely with that doubt, the heat of uncertainty simmering just beneath the calm surface he tried to maintain. Could he risk bearing his soul in a dish? "Let us do a taste test before we plan too much," Robert suggested, mistaking Jason's pause for indecision about logistics. "Get a feel for the flavors." As the ingredients came together in his hands, cutting, mixing, and arranging, Jason realized this was not just about cooking, it was an act of vulnerability. As they moved toward executing the dish, Jason's heart raced with a mix of apprehension and determination. He was about to confront his past, his truths, and his capabilities. Would this sandwich carry the weight of his story? Would it resonate like he envisioned? "All right, Jason, the moment has come," Robert said, placing the assembled ingredients on the counter. "Let us see how far you're willing to go for this." The air buzzed with palpable tension, the reality of his journey crystallizing at the edge of a knife. Would he embrace the flavors of his truth or shy away? With Robert watching intently and Clara leaning in with breathless anticipation, Jason picked up his knife, ready to slice into the past and serve up his truth. But as he approached that first cut, the anxiety loomed larger than ever, a tantalizing question hanging in the air. Was he truly ready to reveal the taste of his soul? Jason stood at the counter, the array of ingredients laid before him like a canvas blank and ready for expression. With the knife gripped firmly in his hand, he took a deep breath. Clara's presence lingered in his thoughts, a beacon guiding him to embrace the potential of the moment. This was not just another meal, it was a testament to his journey, a flavorful narrative crafted through trials, lessons, and the unyielding spirit that had sparked his creativity. As he began slicing through the bread, the crust crackled with a comforting familiarity. The texture reminded him of his childhood, days filled with warmth and laughter in the kitchen with his mother. Each slice represented a memory, an emotion, swirling together to forge his identity. Then came the vibrant tomatoes, their juiciness a reminder of summer's bounty. He vividly recalled the satisfaction of growing them in the garden and the nurturing touch required to bring them from seed to table. Mixing in the fresh basil, he felt a thrill of nostalgia. The fragrance filled the kitchen, a soothing balm against the raw edge of vulnerability creeping in. "Don't forget the jalapenos," Robert encouraged, noting Jason's momentary hesitation. "Right," Jason replied, fetching the spicy peppers and dicing them with conviction. They brought a vibrancy that acknowledged the complexities of his story. Life had not always been a smooth ride, there were moments of heat and unpredictability that shaped who he was. With each ingredient, he narrated a chapter, incorporating flavors that encapsulated struggles and triumphs alike. The final plating was a work of art, colors in harmony, textures in contrast. Each bite would tell a story, just as Clara had encouraged him to create. With a flourish, he adorned the sandwich with a drizzle of balsamic reduction, an element of sophistication that invited diners into a deeper dialogue about flavor and memory. "Now that looks like something," Robert said, a note of approval in his voice. Jason's heart surged with satisfaction. He had transformed his fears into something beautiful and palatable. This meal was not merely an outcome, it embodied growth and confidence, a proclamation of everything he had overcome. As he stepped back and beheld the creation, he knew this moment marked not just a culinary success, but a personal renaissance. He was no longer just the homeless man who had muddled through life, he was a chef who had faced his demons and emerged with his identity firmly re-established. As his guests arrived, Jason felt the air crackle with anticipation. When the time came to present his creation, he stood before them with certainty. His voice rang clear as he shared the tale behind the sandwich, each component linked to a memory, a lesson learned, expressing both vulnerability and resilience. The room held its breath, he could see Robert nodding, a subtle hint of respect in his eyes. "Tonight's dish represents my journey, the flavors of my past melding with aspirations for the future," he concluded, fervor building in his tone. "And as we share this, I invite you to savor not just the taste, but the story within." The first bites echoed across the room, silence stretching into delighted murmurs. Jason witnessed smiles blossoming amidst the flavors, he felt their reactions ripple through him. Each mouthful was a dialogue, a connection weaving through time and space, momentarily bridging the distance between past and present. When Robert finally stood to address the crowd, Jason held his breath, not in trepidation this time, but in anticipation. "What Jason has crafted tonight isn't just a delightful dish, it's a narrative of resilience," Robert declared, his voice steady. "He has transformed his experiences into art, a celebration of flavors that speaks of struggle and triumph." Tears pricked at the corners of Jason's eyes as he took in the sincerity of Robert's words. Not just recognition, but validation. He had tackled the challenges and laid bare his vulnerabilities and had emerged stronger, more competent, and deserving of praise. In that moment, he realized he was no longer just clawing out of shadows, but stepping boldly into the light. As the evening unfolded amidst laughter and joy, Jason felt gratitude swell within him. He had traversed far from that dark place of uncertainty, finding clarity in his own narrative. This was his achievement, a confluence of experience, culinary ambition, and self-discovery manifesting in every bite shared around the table. With each smiling face and gleeful remark, Jason forged ahead, buoyed by the knowledge that he had not merely reclaimed his culinary identity, but had also reclaimed himself. No longer shackled by past failures or others' judgments, he had established his place within a community that embraced his story. In the end, Jason felt solid confidence cocoon him. He knew future challenges awaited, yet he was armed with a newfound competence and clarity. He would continue to grow both as a chef and as an individual, and there would be no turning back. This chapter closed, but the book of his life was far from finished. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to the channel to keep up with the next exclusive stories of emotional journey and individual growth. Leave a like now to help boost the algorithm so others can witness these powerful transformations. Comment your reactions and theories about Jason's incredible journey and share that meaningful wisdom you've gained. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel inspired by the power of personal overcoming. Your support is crucial, and only true fans understand the depth of sharing such stories.